Well, hello everyone, this is Darren Lombard speaking, and I am showing a Bose Wave Radio CD player, the System 4 version, disassembled. And the reason that it is disassembled is because I operate a humidifier and unfortunately made the mistake of not using distilled water, but instead the tap water that comes from the city of Los Angeles. And believe me when I tell you, the tap water here is full of minerals and other materials that, when atomized and pumped into the air, covers literally everything in your home with a fine white powder. It's supposed to be harmless. It's a calcium, essentially. So it's probably not harmful if you breathe it, but if it covers your electronics, you could have some problems. For example, the CD player here was no longer able to read anything because on the inside, this little glass eye component here, this is a laser that's responsible for reading the data, the information, the music information on your compact discs. Well, it was covered in this white fine powder that literally was on this display, on the inside and outside of this component, covering every aspect of this unit, and therefore it was no longer able to read the microscopic pits, is what they're called, the little gaps, if you will, in the surface of the CD, and therefore it wasn't able to find track 1. It was the head was moving past the beginning and the end of the CD. It was unable to read the table of contents. It would play certain songs, usually after track 3, but then failed to read the rest of the song, and so on and so forth. This was a very excruciating and frustrating experience for me because I happen to like listening to uncompressed digital audio on well-made compact discs. I don't like streaming. I don't do MP3s unless I'm in the car, and juggling CDs while I'm driving is not tenable. So it didn't do very much to have to clean this up here. I used a bit of rubbing alcohol with a Q-tip to deal with the sensitive components. The plastic pieces I just wiped down with these Clorox wipes, and things that could not be wiped down, like the speakers, for example, I used this, your garden variety N-Dust compressed air to blow away most of the fine white particles. Now, there's already another YouTube video that explains on how to disassemble this unit. It's a little different between the version 3, the so-called System 3 Bose Wave Radio CD player, and the System 4 version that I have. I was looking for a video that talked about System 4, and I could not find it, so that's why I'm shooting this. The good news is that the difference between the version 3 and version 4 system is that they actually simplified how the CD player is mounted on the inside of the unit. If we take a look inside here, they kept it simple. Instead of having a bunch of screws holding it down, it actually rides, or floats if you will, on these rubber feet on either side of the actual CD drive, right? It just sits on the inside of the unit and is held in place because of the form factor of the inside of the chassis. The part that was really tricky, however, was dealing with how to open this up so that way I could get to the head, right? The way that this kind of opens up like a jaw. There's this covering that goes over this unit as well for some reason, and the whole thing, by the way, is held together by these two tiny screws. The larger screws you see here are the exterior chassis screws, but these two screws right here are what hold the CD player together. So I'm going to pause the video and slightly put this thing back together again to show you where they go and how they and how this is installed. Okay, so the first super tiny screw is the one that you see here in the upper right hand corner of the CD drive, from the perspective of the front load door, right? So this piece here, it comes open essentially when you insert a CD, and so this is considered the front of the unit. So if you're looking at it top down, you go to the upper right hand corner. That's where the first screw goes. These are very, very difficult to place back in, so you have to be careful when you do it. I'm going to go ahead and put that back in and then show where the other one goes. Okay, now that I have that one screwed back in, we're going to talk a little bit about this cover. Getting it off was a little bit interesting, by the way. So as you can see, there's these little feet, I guess you might call them, that kind of slide into open slots that are on the sides of the actual CD player itself. And so first we have to carefully turn this guy over. As you can, it's upside down, so this is the bottom we're looking at. The cover is the one with the label, right? As you can see, this is a patented design, so you're not going to find this probably in any other kind of CD player. So, if I can do this one-handed, the way that I got it off is that it slid down. So I imagine that the way that this works going back in is we find a little groove here on the side, and then as soon as it sits down relatively flush with the rest of the unit, we slide it back over. Probably not that low, it's probably just right below here. And go ahead and slide it back over in place. So I'll go ahead and do that while this is on pause so I can use two hands, and then I'll show you where the screw goes. Right, so as suspected, I needed to use two hands, and it was really just a matter of just kind of centering it right over and sliding it gently up again. If you take this apart, you'll try to pay attention to the motion when you pull it down. You have to pull it down, up, and away to get this cover off, right? And so it's kind of a similar motion in reverse. You're kind of going down, slightly in, and back up again. So that way this is fully flush on the bottom, or the front, if you will, and the back or the top from this perspective. And again, this is the top because you can see the label. Okay, so where's the screw? Well, don't get it confused. The previous super tiny screw was in the upper right hand corner of the actual CD player or CD drive itself. Now that the cover is on, the other super tiny screw goes in the upper left hand corner, right? And before I go ahead and screw it back down again, let me talk a little bit about the tool that I'm using to do it. I happen to have this really tiny Phillips screwdriver that I've had for probably years, because I don't remember where it came from or how I got it. I'm not a handyman. I'm really not good at stuff like this at all. So I can't tell you, Google this term to find a so-called super tiny screwdriver. But for comparison's sake, this is the regular screwdriver that I use to get these out, right? And I'm going to put it right next to this one. And this is the screwdriver that I'm using for this screw right here. So it's probably the same as the Bose Wave Radio System 3 or version 3 unit. So if you find another video that's talking about how to disassemble the CD player within the Bose Wave Radio version 3, it's going to be the same screwdriver, I think, for this as well. So I'm going to go ahead and screw this back in and then show the rest of the reassembly process. So this next part is going to be a little bit tricky to talk about because this is kind of unusual. I have experience in reinstalling and replacing ATA and older, like UDMA, I think they were used to be called hard drives and servers and computers back in the late 90s and early 2000s when I worked in data centers and whatnot. So this was kind of a familiar process to me, where you essentially have like a data ribbon cable right here because it's hooked into the laser assembly. We're looking at the bottom of the drive now. As you can see, the feet are up. I flipped it over. And so this is the data cable, and this is what I believe to be the power cable because it runs directly to like the, there's on the other side of this is the motor, like a motor assembly. I'm imagining it's like the thing that powers the guy that spins your CD, and that also causes the laser reader to roll back and forth in this like guide track, as you will. You can see this little slot here. Maybe you can. I'm going to try to see if I can get some light going so you can see it a little bit better. So if we look here at the, see, what are we looking at here? Yes, there we go. So there's this little slot that I'm highlighting with my flashlight. That's where the little laser eye goes, as it were. So this moves up and down, back and forth in this little plastic tray, if you will, and that's all based on this motor. So you got to get these connected back up in the right place on the inside of the unit. And so they don't make it. This part was not easy, not a breeze at all. So this is the top of the unit, and this is the bottom of the unit. I've kind of got it leaning open, and there's like this data ribbon cable that connects the display to the main board and what appears to be a battery. And so pretty much what we're going to do here is to kind of find a way to reconnect this, and once I do, I'll show that part, and then sneak this back into where it was before, so it's in the same spot. So when we sandwich this all together, hopefully all the parts and pieces align, and this $500 CD player will be usable. So let's see how this goes. So putting this guy back together again could probably use its own video because there's a lot going on here. There was some sort of component on the left-hand side here that kind of pops in and pops out of a plastic bracket. It's like wrapped in copper and it's a piece of metal, so I think it may be the AM radio receiver. I'm not sure. Obviously, I didn't design this thing, so I couldn't tell you. But, yeah, getting this guy back together again was a bit of a hassle. So those two ribbon cables that I was describing earlier, I was able to plug them back in. They're kind of obvious because one's wider than the other. The tricky thing is that there's this cable, the other ribbon cable that I was showing before, how the display is connected to the main board. Well, it has to be, like, looped around the side in between the two rubber feet of the CD player. So that way it'll fit in there. You can't go through the front, it'll be in the way. You can't run it through the back. This is too deep when it goes inside of the entire chassis. And so the only way that it works is if you run it to the side and then underneath. And you got to really jiggle and shimmy and, kind of play with it until it finally all sandwiches together. It's kind of awkward. And the only reason why it is that I can think of that they decided to go with a design like that, so that way they would have fewer screws to deal with. I didn't need any additional screws to take this apart or put it back together again. It just kind of sandwiched in place. And to make sure everything is like good to go, I'm giving it a good squeeze. I'm making sure, by the way, that certain key areas are meshed with one another. So there's a little area right here. These two pieces need to fit snugly together on the right side, and then up front there's these, I don't even know what you call them, but there's like these two little posts right here. These need to line up, and there's another set on the left. They need to line up as well. And then if we take a look on the other side here, the same thing we saw on the other side, this needs to line up also. So all four of those need to line up correctly. You also have to worry about making sure to clear this metal piece that needs to go behind this plastic housing for the speakers. I mean, in case most people who know what a Bose Wave Radio is and what it does, they know what this plastic is for, what these I guess cable wire, whatever you want to call it, what these two guys are here for, is to make it so that way, the sound coming out of these super tiny speakers, it doesn't sound like a clock radio, but it actually sounds like a full-fledged hi-fi stereo system. I don't live in a big place, but I like my sound to be clear with a lot of bass and definition and dynamics, and this thing I once saw it demonstrated at a shopping mall in West LA about 20 years ago, one of the original ones. I think it was the System 2 unit, and I was sold. They had a little demonstration unit where basically they had an open unit with a little lever on the side, and it was playing music, and so you heard it with the speaker closed to the shroud, and then what you could do is you could pull this lever and pull the speakers forward of this metal shroud, plastic shroud, and hear the difference, how it would sound like a regular clock radio again, and then when it was reunited with the whole system, it would have the full sound again. So I thought, hey, this is not a $500 gimmick, this is actually good sound engineering on the part of Bose. I was really happy about that. So, yeah, let's go ahead and put everything back together, fire it up, and see if it actually can play music. Well, good news. It appears as though it is working, which is excellent. No skipping. It played right away. Just in case anybody's interested in knowing what this is from 2000, Dawkins Live from the Sun. I've actually not listened to this yet, but Dawkins is one of my favorite bands, so thought I would check this out and see if it would work, and if it is my CD, it wouldn't be too difficult to replace it. So there's that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put this back together again and sign off for now. I hope this video has been informative or educational for someone. This has been Darren Lombard.